Pressure's mounting on Mauricio Pochettino after last night's Carabao Cup exit at Colchester, and to be quite honest, it never ceases to amaze me these days how fickle the fans and media can be. This isn't just Tottenham fans, this is just everywhere. Just so fickle, and how quick the thirst for change comes about, and how little loyalty there is towards for past achievements and longevity and those kind of things. This starts being bandied about of only winning 8 games in 26 matches with no real context whatsoever. Towards the end of last season, Tottenham were going for a Champions League final. They were in the latter stages of the Champions League. There was no danger, I didn't feel at any stage, that they wouldn't make the top 4 of the Premier League and secure the Champions League status for this season, regardless of what happened in Madrid. They were losing games towards the end of last season. The Burnley game away from home was the big turning point. That was, you saw Pochettino's reaction straight after the final whistle of that game when he went after Mike Dean and then apologised afterwards. That was the day when the title was lost for Tottenham. Way back in, I think it was February time. I think pretty much everything that happened in the league after that you can almost discount. When the Champions League games came around, Tottenham delivered, and they got through the successive rounds to get to the final in Madrid. I don't think that would have happened at all had they been in a title race. I think surely everybody can understand that where Tottenham are, what the budget that they're working to, that basically they have to make sacrifices if they're going to get to a Champions League final. So straight away, to be bolting on the defeats that happened towards the end of last season and disappointing results is very unfair on Pochettino. Now, there's no escaping the fact that already this season they're 10 points behind now in the title race after just 6 matches off the title pace. It already looks like they're not going to win the title this season. So fair enough, that's a disappointment. I'm not here to dispute the fact that it's been a poor start for Tottenham. I'd even be inclined to say that Pochettino has made too much of the fact that players could have gone in the August window. He's made too much of a play of how his hands are tied behind his back, which I think we all accept that they are relative to the other elite teams in the Premier League. But I think he's made too much of a play on the fact. I think it's a position where things become a self-fulfilling prophecy. What you tell the media and the narrative that you create then becomes the narrative, and that's the narrative that the players work to. And I think that was a mistake. I don't think he should be doing that and making such a big thing about it. But obviously it's politics. If he wants to get a better deal for himself at Spurs, and he wants to have a better budget and put a bit of pressure on Daniel Levy through the media in order to get what he wants in the future, then maybe that's what he has to do. And that's again another sacrifice he's made. He's sacrificing short-term well-being of his players, as in mental state of mind to approach games, in favour of playing a political game and trying to deal himself a better hand in the future. Nonetheless, so it's been a poor start. I think we can all agree it's been a poor start for Tottenham, and it's possibly not for the first time. Tottenham seasons previously, they've not particularly started well, then come like a steam train in the second half of the season trying to nick the title, or they seem to put themselves into contention. It has been a theme in recent years, I believe, that they put themselves into contention with the second half of the season, but they've dropped points in the first half of the season. Now, I think a lot of this comes down to Pochettino's personality. He leads with a process known as introverted sensing, which is a perceiving process, not a judging process, and basically means that everything he does is can be quite slow and deliberate and exacting, and it's a process that tends to benefit from compound effects, and very much hare and tortoise mentality. Pochettino's not inclined to do anything radical, so now even he's in this pickle with his results at the minute. He's not inclined to do anything radical. He's not an innovator tactically. He doesn't do anything unexpected too often. He just keeps reinforcing the same tactical identity and going about his business the same way. Consistency of team selection, you know, it tends to be when Tottenham reap the benefits and you know, develop a momentum as the season goes on, because it's the reinforcement of the same habits over and over and over again. So, you know, this is not something that's going to change quickly. There's something that's not going to change quickly, you know, based on the position that they're in now. It's not like Pochettino's going to do something particularly radical. He said himself that we start behind the other teams because of, you know, the pressures we had on us at the end of the transfer window compared to other clubs, and now there's a catch-up process that we have to go through as well, because of how we started behind other teams and the business that wasn't done and all of those kinds of things. So, you know, he's even coming out there and saying it himself. But the problem is now is the spotlight is on him massively, and you know, all this talk about potential alternatives and maybe him getting the sack and fans calling for his head, or, you know, but starting to ask the questions. The pressure's mounting now, so that begins to shape the expectations of the next few weeks. It puts undue pressure on the players, only adds to the, you know, Pochettino, you could argue, is trying to take the pressure off his players by saying that, listen, we've got to go through this process because of the transfer window, because of the limitations we work to. You know, it's going to take time, but because the thirst for change nowadays is so, you know, it is so unquenchable, and the fact that these questions are already being asked so soon into this run only exacerbates the situation and makes it worse and makes it harder for Tottenham in the coming games, and really ramps up the pressure, just in the same way that what Pochettino says about the limitations he's working to and giving the players the excuse in August, you know, that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The fact now, this pressure is generating momentum, so it's going to make these next few games even tougher, and it's going to be an intriguing time for Spurs, because I think if everyone was to take a step back and cut Pochettino some slack, I don't think there's any doubt that as the season develops, Tottenham would become a force again, and that would it's possibly too late for them to feature in the title race. But, you know, I don't think there's any danger that Tottenham make the top four this season. I think there's more than enough chance that they get into the knockout stages of the Champions League. And as last season proved, you know, maybe not being in the title race but being comfortable with the top four finish might really aid their Champions League aspirations later in the season. We saw last season what a random tournament it can be. And it's in a tournament like this where the fact that Tottenham aren't quite at the same level as the biggest hitters in Europe doesn't necessarily matter when you've got 4 or 5 years of good habits reinforced over time. I think they've shown they can finish seasons strongly, so there's no reason why they can't have another real good run at the Champions League this season. But I think the idea of throwing all this out now just seems absurd to me, because, you know, and just how little what he's built up over this past 5 years counts for. Because, I mean, not just in terms of he deserves that faith, I think all the value that he brings to the table for Tottenham is in that 5 years, is in that constant reinforcement of you know, a methodology. So I just think it would be crazy for Tottenham to even consider getting rid of him. But that's just the way things are nowadays.